gotta understand, the UFC has a lot of great fighters.
They've only got a couple scary ones. The emotions involved in the world of mixed martial arts are incomparable to any other sports. You feel them at the highest degree, whether it's the highest of highs or the lowest of lows. And even for us fans watching at home, that emotion transcends into all of us. But for the brave fighter making the walk to the octagon, those emotions are what makes them come back to it. What makes their heart pump. It's the reason behind this surge of adrenaline. It is the drug that they crave. They can feel happy.
Man, this moment is so amazing, bro.
They can also feel excited. There's one emotion that even the thought of makes the fighter double think his decisions. What am I doing here?
I ask myself always, shit, what the hell I'm doing here?
There needs to be a way out of this.
Tell you the utmost truth, I didn't even want to go out there tonight. I was thinking of ways to like fake an injury.
Why the fuck did I decide to do this for a living?
Was there any part of you inside that was like, this is dumb, like I probably shouldn't be doing this?
Yep, that was my exact thoughts when I was sat in the locker room tonight. I was like, what am I doing?
One look across the octagon in that lead hand of yours starts twitching, not because you're excited, but there's something else. You meet your opponent in the middle, as per tradition, and by the time you return to your corner, you forgot most of your game plan.
How many lefts did I take when I should have went right to end up at this arena?
Now your whole body is trembling. You know what that is. That's fear. MMA fighters are gladiators, and not enough praise can do their mentality justice. But at the end of the day, these guys are still human, and it's only natural to feel fear, especially when you end up inside the cage, opposing their power, be it greatness or just outright savagery. These five forces haunted their divisions for a long time, and this is how they struck fear into the souls of their victims. Number 1. Francis Ngannou.
Francis Ngannou, you have a destroyer.
The heavyweight division has been called the home of the baddest dudes in the world. Every single fighter in the weight class is a badass, the type of soldiers you'd send to war. But there are levels to the heavyweights as well, and at the very top, you'll see someone like Francis Ngannou.
This is not just any heavyweight contender.
Knockout power makes even the most skilled opponents wearing on edge, and Francis had the touch of absolute oblivion.
Francis Ngannou has the world record for the most powerful punch. His punch is the equivalent to 96 horsepower, which is equal to getting hit by a Ford Escort going as fast as it can. And it's more powerful than a 12-pound sledgehammer swung full force from overhead. Holy shit.
And it doesn't matter how granite your chin is. Hell, it can be made out of diamonds. But 1/2 precise shots from the Predator, and you'll go down with a concussion that shortens your life, not just your career. Every second spent in the cage probably felt like a death match against the clock. He could catch you at any time, even from the most awkward angles. He generated an outrageous amount of power, and as you keep walking backwards in fear, another thought pops up in your head. God forbid he knocks me out. Will I even wake up after? Number 2, Yoel Romero. We've heard it time and time again. This is a young man's sport. And if you start in your late 20s or early 30s, you have a snowball's chance in hell of succeeding.
He came to MMA at what, 35?
As you age, you lose speed, power, athleticism. That's the general near absolute rule. But we've already heard that. There's something different about the water in Cuba. How do you explain your Romero?
His ability to just be calm and then explode. It's very terrifying.
This guy started MMA late in his life. After a long and brutal amateur wrestling career, the common wisdom predicted that he was not going to last very long. He looked impressive, almost too impressive, but there was just no way this battered old man was going to sustain his athleticism. We're still waiting because for some reason, Romero never ages.
The doctor calls Dana and goes, this is the most unusual human being I have ever seen. And Dana's like, oh yeah, he's a great athlete. You know, how's the eye doing? Like, the doctor goes, no. Dana, I don't mean from an athletic standpoint. I mean from 40 years in practice. I've never seen a human being like this. And then begin to break down, medically speaking, the things that were unique about Yoel.
Everything is possible in your life when you believe.
Punching him feels like punching steel. So even if you do land a shot on him, you're going to suffer. He's older, but he's twice as fast and thrice as powerful. At any given moment, the soldier of God is going to leap through the air and bust your head open. A super soldier who never seems to age and holds inhumane levels of strength and agility.
Rings a bell. Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
Yeah, but Captain Kuba ain't merciful at all. Number 3, Deiveson Figueiredo. For a long time, the primary complaint against the flyweight was that the athletes are just not violent enough. Sure, they move fast, they fight well, and hold supreme levels of skill. But you don't hear damage when the flyweights connect. And there was definitely truth to that. The division needed a wrecking ball, and we eventually found one in Deiveson Figueiredo.
In the UFC, they were going to get rid of that flyweight division, and then this Brazilian monster comes out of nowhere.
The god of war. He wasn't built like Ngannou, Romero, or the Hulk, but for the rest of the flyweights. This guy was terrifying. Figueiredo had the same level of technique and skills as his peers. Yet he had unreal power and savagery for a flyweight. Look at what he did to Joseph Benavidez when the title was on the line. After the first knockdown, Benavidez wasn't just concussed. He had one foot in the grave and a savage sense of fear that sent poor Joe to what I only assume was some electric maze of darkness.
Joseph.
And he probably suffocated himself at the end. You don't have to be 260 pounds of muscle in order to be intimidating. You just have to be different. Deiveson Figueiredo was not your typical flyweight. Number 4, Alex Pereira. Initially, people were convinced that Alex Pereira was put on this earth to hunt Israel Adesanya.
Then there's this ultimate bad guy who was just in some fucking bar in Brazil, and then Izzy had to open his mouth.
Probably because Poten was only known as the guy who defeated the middleweight champion and not much else. But then Poten entered the UFC, and fans started paying more attention.
This fucking guy's terrifying. He was just different. Like the power was different, the style was different. It's a weird
He didn't
style.
speak English. If you attempted to talk to him, he would just stare at you with the same stoic look. Unblinking eyes. He would keep looking at you like an unhinged psychopath, staring down his prey before ending its misery.
He's just staring at me the whole time.
We said that back then.
He does not break eye contact.
He's a pretty intimidating dude.
You then recall all that this menace has achieved in the kickboxing world and the MMA worlds, and the terror starts to creep up your throat. That's when it hits you. He wasn't put on this earth to torment Izzy. He was unleashed to torment whoever was unfortunate enough to end up in his crosshairs. And he is still staring right at your soul.
He wants to smile after fights or before fights.
He just want to fight.
Stays cold.
He's there for a reason.
Yeah.
To just beat somebody.
With God-given power, technique, and skill honed over decades, and a stare befitting a warrior who knows nothing but fighting and training, Alex Pereira only needed a handful of UFC fights to establish himself as one of the scariest fighters, not just in UFC, but in the history of combat sports.
Did you see the size of the fella? Like, why is nobody mentioning that? Dude's just giant.
There are clips of him having fun, skits and shit, but opponents would be fools to fall for it. The real Alex Pereira showed up whenever he sensed a confrontation. And you know what he does to people. Ask Sean Strickland.
The difference is the man touches you and you just die.
Ask Jerry Prohaska.
I was out, but you know, I will never stop.
Or ask Israel Adesanya.
I'll say, Pereira is a special human being, not just a fighter, special human being.
Number 5, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib was a special athlete. We all know this, don't we? You know how it goes. Never lost a fight. He barely lost a round and never bled inside the cage.
No one is as flawless as Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Every other dude on this list was feared as a destructive force. But with Khabib, it wasn't the dread of a knockout, or damage, or concussions. It was the terror of hopelessness.
Cage gonna close. I'm gonna maul him. Like always.
There is no game plan against this guy. Everyone knows what he intends to do, but not a single fighter is able to stop him. But you psych yourself up by inner monologues. You tell yourself that he is human. After all, he can bleed, right?
Absolutely. And how does Khabib do on his back? What if I take Khabib down? Huh? I don't know. Who knows? You know? Shit.
But then the fight starts. He starts to pressure, and you end up against the cage or on the ground, carrying his weight and getting beaten into a pulp. That's when you finally realize you could have spent years preparing for Khabib, but it just wouldn't be enough. When that thought crosses your mind, you give up on fighting back and simply hope to survive. The devastating Francis, Romero, and Poten broke faces, but Khabib broke wills of some of the toughest people in the world.
Never felt anything like it, you know, and I have 46 fights. I've fought all kind of different people, all kind of different styles. Been around the world training in gyms. This guy's good.
That's the fear of greatness. And once you realize that no matter what you do, you won't be on this guy's level, that's when he kicks in and leaves you a broken man, mentally and emotionally. After going through the entries, I have newfound respect for every fighter who entered into a cage with these monsters and walked out of there alive. If you can weaponize fear in a sport like this, where people are prepared to give their life away, then congratulations, you are a living, breathing, grim Reaper.